Right, I think we might as well go ahead and make a start. So I'm sure most of you know me already by now. I'm Jason Taylor, Head of Architectural Digital Design here at MSA. I've been exploring the last couple of years a range of AI tools. I'm going to be talking through some of those today, including some bleeding edge stuff that isn't even emerged into practice yet. So firstly, a little bit about AI. Who here has used AI before? What have you used? Sure, so ChatGPT and some photo stuff. Anything else? DALL-E, Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, did you say? Fantastic. Anything else? Kriya. Yep, love me a bit of Kriya. We're going to be using a few tools today. I am going to take you through a little bit about the AI policy at MSA first, just because it is really important that we all know what we can and can't do. So, MSA's AI policy. We are taking an ethical approach. So as you know, MSA is split across the two universities. Promise you it does get more visual than this. Split across the two universities, and initially last year we had some big conflicts because UOM had completely banned the use of AI altogether, whereas MMU were planning to embrace it. So us as a school, we were a bit like, how do we grade students then? What do we do? So we've worked a lot with both institutions and we've kind of nailed it now, I think. UOM have now changed their policy based on what we've done here in our school. So the key principles are, key thing to keep in your mind when deciding if you should use AI, are that your work should always authentically represent your abilities. So for instance, if you're submitting a visual, if it's an AI piece of work that's something that you couldn't create in a rendering engine or Photoshop or something like that, then you shouldn't be submitting it because it's not a true representation of what you can produce. You should also never trust the outputs of generative AI uncritically. So we'll talk a bit about the different types of AI and what the issues and limitations are of each. But typically you'll find that a lot of AI, while it does provide some interesting stuff, a lot of it can lie. And we've had some serious issues last year with some submissions that, again, I will touch on. Again, you're welcome to take a photo of this if you like, or I can talk through it. But the key things that you need to understand is that you can use AI to help yourself understand content, for instance, ChatGPT, asking it questions. But you need to check the sources against real-world sources, because ChatGPT tends to lie, tends to make things up. You can use AI as part of the planning process. So for instance, design ideation, to brainstorm, get ideas, map things out. You can use it to find information. And you can also use it to provide feedback on work, but you must maintain authorship and ownership of what you produce. So for instance, if you're writing an essay and if the AI has written most of it for you, you are not the owner of that work. It needs to be something that you've made, that you submit. You can't use the AI to create the assessment itself. So what we mean here is, you know, within your project briefs you get learning outcomes, things that you must evidence to achieve your project, to achieve your grade. If you are using AI to meet the learning outcomes, you yourself are not meeting the learning outcomes. So that's where we kind of draw the line with it. If you're using AI to do the other bits that aren't necessarily meeting learning outcomes, for instance, you're using it for presentation, or maybe you're doing like a design project, but renders aren't something that are graded, in which case, that's not a learning outcome. Go ahead and use AI as long as it's allowed in the brief. UOM, they had a slightly different approach, but as I say, they've changed it all now. It mostly aligns to what we're doing at MMU. Again, feel free to have a read. I'm going to send this out to everyone at the end as well. I'm going to put it on Moodle somewhere. I'll send a link once it's up. But essentially, what we've had to do in MSA is we've had to try and work out what our stance as a school is. And we've been doing a lot of work with the Landscape Institute, RIBA, and a lot of emerging practices. And I think, realistically, MSA as a school is by far the furthest ahead in the UK in terms of AI. We're so far ahead now, it's ridiculous, which is fantastic. So I'd say, yeah, key things here are that we've combined all the guidance. We're going to be going through ongoing critical engagement with an evaluation of AI tools as they emerge. We're not just going to be like, oh, this is ChatGPT, and then forget about it. We're going to constantly be adapting. And this is staff and students as well. I'm running a range of CPD sessions once a month with all staff in the school to make sure all staff are fully up to date on all the emerging stuff. So no member of staff falls behind. We're going to be educating the staff and students to develop AI literacies. We're establishing clear academic regulations and practice guidance around the appropriate use and inappropriate use of AI. We are enhancing our educational practice to design out opportunities for AI tools to be used unethically. So what I mean by that is trying to remove unethical use from the design process and try and bring in opportunities that you can use it for skills development. We're also going to prepare our students and staff for future workplaces where the use of generative AI is integral to the practice. Now for me, I think just as with the rise of the calculator and the computer, obviously there's going to be a paradigm shift in the way that technology is used in architectural practice in 1 year, 2 year, 3 years time. That being said, I don't think that we should abandon everything that we're teaching. We still need to learn how to produce technical drawings. We still need to learn how to 3D model things. We still need to learn how to design and visual communicate things. But we would be idiots if we didn't prepare you how to use AI tools. And again, I think we're one of 5 out of 160 something schools of architecture in the UK that are allowing the use of AI tools. Insane. The other schools will catch up. Again, I don't want to bore you too much with this. I am going to be sending this out, but I just wanted to give you a bit of a soft touch on what our kind of stance is. There's a few things in here that I will touch on more a little bit later on about academic misconduct, things to be aware of. But I'm sure most of you are a little bit confused by now. Like, this is a lot of text to read. I wanted to do something fun and visual. So I think let's break it down. So what does generative AI look like? So already, when I wrote this last week, this is now kind of a little bit outdated because I've found a new process myself. But as you mentioned, ChatGPT is the most common text and code-based editor. It's what we call a large language model. We'll talk about that in a second. We have image-based generators that can go from text to image to image, various forms of other geometry to image now, and even video-based AI, which is insane. And we're going to be doing all of these today. So the first thing, LLMs, large language models. Has anyone heard this term before? LLM? Some of you? So LLMs, large language models, are basically what things like ChatGPT are built on. ChatGPT is basically a big collection of data and language and information. It's a big neural network, and it's a model that puts all this stuff together to give us feedback. And that's basically all it is. That's why we can ask it questions. It's why we can ask it to generate snippets of code, because it references a big, large online library of data. Now, things that you can do with it, you can rewrite paragraphs of text into something more legible. Fantastic if English is not your first language. Even more fantastic if English is your first language, but you're a little bit dyslexic like I am. So I find this an exceptional tool to brush up the way that my text reads. You can ask questions about various subjects and fields of inquiry. If you're starting a research project, for instance, then maybe you want to ask some questions. Say, I'm an architecture student, I'm interested in AI. What kind of topic should I be looking at? Can you recommend some books and authors? And it will generate a list. Yes?
I'm also dyslexic. Sometimes when I'm writing, I use Grammarly.
Yeah.
Is that fine under university guidelines? And is rewriting with ChatGPT if you're dyslexic fine in university guidelines?
That is a very good question. So the use of other tools such as Grammarly, Grammarly in particular historically wasn't AI based, so there was never an issue with it.
Yeah.
Grammarly does now have AI tools built in, so the university is a little bit, we need to keep an eye on it from afar, but realistically we understand that the pros outweigh the cons. So everyone is allowed to use Grammarly at the moment. There are various transcription tools like Otter AI that some people have started using for automatic transcriptions. At the moment, the university has banned these. So the only time they wouldn't be banned is if you ask everyone in like a Teams meeting first, can I use Otter AI? If everyone says yes, you can go ahead and use it. Personally, I would chance it. I would just go ahead and use Otter. It's really nice. But realistically, MS Teams has its own transcription services anyway. So it's already doing it anyway. Other things you can do, as I said, proofread large bodies of text. Now, that could be interpreted as chucking entire essays. you need to be really careful what you chuck into AI, because again, if you start modifying things, it can then start restructuring stuff. It can add information that is not factual into your text, and it can get you into some trouble with your submissions. So again, you just need to be really careful. You can scan images and put them into ChatGPT now. It's not just text-based. You can upload an image straight into the ChatGPT prompt, and you can tell it to generate a description of an image. Or you can even like upload a photo of yourself and say, roast me, which is hilarious to do. And it'll like give you a load of information. I uploaded a picture of my car onto it the other week. I was like, roast my car. And it like proper grilled my car, which was kind of depressing. It's really interesting. It can visually analyze from a photo what type of car you have, what model it is, what color it is, what size wheels you have. All of these things. It's scary how good LLMs have become. And again, that's just a reference about cars. Think of how you could use this for architecture. Think about the accessibility side of things. You know, maybe you want to make your PDFs super accessible. Maybe you want to make it adaptable for blind people. Rather than tagging every single image, you could chuck an image into ChatGPT, generate a description, and add that under the accessibility tools in your Adobe software. Really, really nice things to be able to start doing. And I think in the end, you won't even need to do that in ChatGPT. Most Adobe software will just do that for you, realistically. It'll just generate descriptions of what it sees. It's really, really nice that this stuff's coming together. Generating snippets of code in multiple languages. Who here uses Grasshopper in Rhino? Anyone? Has anyone done any Python or C#, HTML, CSS, anything like that, web stuff? Doesn't matter if you haven't. If you wanted to design a custom website, or if you wanted to do some complex Grasshopper stuff, you can describe what you want your script to do, what you want your text to do into ChatGPT, and it will generate the entire body of code for you to copy and paste and use. I use that on Moodle to create structures of things. I don't bother writing out lines of code anymore. I just say Moodle, I say ChatGPT, I'm using Moodle version 4.2, I want to do this, but with this, in this weird way, how do I do it? It's like, I've got you, Jay. Copy and paste this, you're sorted. And that basically does it. It's amazing. So again, when you use it in these ways, especially if it's to help others, it's a really nice thing to have. As I've said before, you can also use it to take notes in live meetings. That's things like Otter AI, but again, you need to be careful. So what are the downsides of LLMs? The biggest downside is that LLMs, such as ChatGPT, are known to hallucinate. And what we mean by this is that you could ask it questions, and it will say, yep, here's a list of answers, here's all the resources, here's the citations of where we've obtained this data, and you click on those links, they don't exist. It will fabricate information and say, here it is, fully backed up, trust me. And at first glance, you would. But it's only when you start checking links and things that you realize it's completely fabricated information to fit the narrative that you're asking it. So you need to be very careful how you use ChatGPT, particularly in essays. Because, again, it can get you in trouble. We had 7 plagiarism cases raised last year because of ChatGPT. And, you know, it wasn't things like, as a large language model, I can't do this. It wasn't those types of things. It was simply that links, like, and I'm talking 50, 60% of links, didn't work because ChatGPT made them up. And the student had to admit to us what they'd done. We didn't penalize them last year because it was the first year of AI really being adopted in this university. And we didn't have our guidelines out. But we do have very clear guidance now. So don't do that this year. Just be super careful. There's also links on these that how to access each software and stuff that I'm using. So again, no need to write any of these down. Someone mentioned Midjourney. Who was the Midjourney? It was you, right? Yes. Things like text to image. Again, these are built off of large language models, but they go through a kind of diffusion process. I am not going to attempt to describe what diffusion is. Realistically, you don't need to know. But basically, it will take a series of images, it will boil it down into very simplified pixels and start rationalizing chord geometries, and then it will kind of iteratively recycle back through them to add more pixels, more resolution, until you get back up to a full-scale image. And that is based purely on text prompts. And that will reference a bunch of other images that match those prompts, and it will try and stitch these things together. In theory. It has become infinitely more complex since that first description came out, particularly with tools such as in-painting, where you're not even generating an entire image, but just small parts of an image. I'm sure most of you have used the AI tools in Photoshop by now. You know, same thing. You can mask an area, type in a prompt. That's still using a diffusion process, but it's not doing it for an entire scene. It's only doing it for a small area. Crazy stuff. Absolutely crazy. Now, what can you use AI text-to-image for? You can use it to generate images completely from scratch, and I do use from scratch loosely there. We'll talk about data sets in a minute. You can use it to quickly visualize a concept idea, particularly if you're working with a client. Fantastic way to generate some images. But again, you need to be really careful with design ideation. You can use it to generate assets for compositing. So for instance, if you're doing collage work, if you're doing Photoshop stuff, you could easily say, okay, I've not been able to find an image of a person doing this pose. Type that into Midjourney or whatever engine I'm using, get the person in that pose, put them in my Photoshop, I'm using it for compositing. And the same rules then apply as copyright rules. So you know, if you take images online and chop them up and mash them together, if you make a new body of work, that's not plagiarism or copyright theft. That is a new body of work that you've made from it, so it's allowed. It's the same rules with this. Same rules apply. So you can use it for asset creation. Tools such as Photoshop, as I mentioned, have it built directly in, so it's difficult for us to ban these in general. I will talk about how this is going to be used in briefs a bit later, but if a brief says that you're not allowed to use AI, but if you need to use Photoshop, just use Photoshop and not the AI tools. Makes sense. Yeah, I'll say the key things here are that some of the AI tools, for instance, Midjourney, particularly in the early days, were based off of copyrighted material. I'm sure you might have seen they got into a lot of legal trouble over it. They scoured the web, ripped basically the Google image repository, chucked it into the engine to train on, which was built off of an older diffusion engine, and from there they were able to generate this thing. And what that meant is that we were basically using little snippets of other people's images to generate our new images. And then it's like, what is the threshold of like, what percentage of someone's image can I use for myself without being sued? Or can I use someone else's design language without being sued? It becomes a really grey area in terms of design ethics. So we're going to encourage our students to either use ethical AIs or to train their own AIs. Now, luckily, Midjourney, LookX, Krea, Luma, all of the big ones these days, these are all reasonably ethically trained. But I would also say, to be honest, even the ones that are technically unethical, I say go ahead and use them. Because ultimately, design is inspired by design. You know, it's no different than me going out, looking at a Frank Gehry building, copying the design language to create something new. That's not theft. That's design inspired by design. As long as you're not taking entire chunks of someone's building and copying and pasting it and saying, I made this, that's a very different story. I mentioned just now about training AIs. Stable Diffusion and LookX in particular, you can basically upload entire folders of images, for instance, of your own work, chuck them into these engines to train your own AI. And then when you type in prompts or whatever, it will regenerate new images in your style. How crazy is that? Absolutely amazing stuff. As I said, I'm going to try and go through these quite fast because I want to get to the actual practical stuff. I'm sure you want to be making some AI stuff shortly. We do have image-to-image based. So for instance, I could upload a sketch like this one at the top. I'll show this example live in a little bit. I could type in a prompt. This one was done using LookX, and it will use what we call a control net to find structures within the scanned image. It doesn't have to be a sketch, it could be a photo, it could be absolutely anything you want. It will find structures within what you've uploaded as a reference, and it will regenerate that as a new image. So for my one, I said, okay, take my squiggles, regenerate this as an architectural model made of wood, 3-point lighting, blah, blah, blah. And that's what it did. And I can even adjust the strength of how well it should fit to that original geometry. Now again, I don't want to talk to you too much about this. There's a load of text there. You can read it if you want, but again, you'll get all of this at the end. Text to video has really started to emerge in the last couple of months. It's a much newer tool. LookX, I would say, realistically pioneered it. It kind of got there a little bit first, and again, we will use LookX first. I would say try not to do fly-throughs. Fly-throughs just always look rubbish. Even if you're using a rendering engine, no one does fly-throughs these days. It's more like these cinematic kind of zooming and panning and orbiting shots. Try and go for these. Go for smaller shots like these and stitch them together. And typically that's how most of these AI text image to video scenes work. They'll give you 5-second snippets of video and then you can just stitch them together. It's really cool stuff. I think something that we're going to see a lot in the next year, because of the way these tools work, obviously you can start combining these with things like photogrammetry, NeRFs, Gaussian splatting, for anyone who's heard of any of these terms. These are cutting edge tech, and you'll be able to start taking stuff like this and generating 3D models from it, which again, absolutely insane. So how can you use these in your studies? Back to a boring wall of text with a little icon that moved out the way. I hate it when it does that. We've made this super easy for you over the next year. Within all of your project briefs, you will have a snippet of text as to the appropriate use of AI. Every single brief you study, you'll have a snippet that says one of these. So the default stance by our school is that you can use AI. AI is permitted with no changes. And basically that just means what we said on the previous slides, the things you can use it for, like design ideation, research, stuff like that. Again, there's a link here to more guidance. You can read through this at your own pace if you like. But you need to stay within that scope. There's then also permitted with changes. This one will have this little icon, this little exclamation mark, and this means that it will go beyond the scope of the standard permitted. This is for briefs where, for instance, we might allow you to use AI-generated images for final submissions. You might be able to use it to generate 3D models. Maybe you're going to do some video stuff. You can do some really cool stuff with it. Some briefs in the school will be using the middle one. For other briefs, we're going to have not permitted. And this is really important for briefs where we need you to really evidence the learning outcomes. So, for instance, dissertations could be a core one, depending on what course you're doing, because each course has different dissertation settings. But it could be that we don't allow it. It might say there's a flat-out ban on ChatGPT, or a flat-out ban on Microsoft Copilot, for instance. Or we may allow you to use it in a tiny way, but specifically you can't generate text, for instance. So have a look through your project briefs, check out the statement that's in there. If you're unsure, you can always talk to me, your course leads, or to the education lead, Sam Higgins. We'll be able to give you further guidance on how you can and can't use AI in your studies. Now the final boring slide is about academic misconduct. So what counts as academic misconduct? Firstly, we have the academic misconduct policy, particularly the plagiarism section, which is what this falls under. There's a link to that for you to read in your own time. Won't bore you with it now. But essentially, I think it's good for us to be transparent with you all in saying that there are no ways for us to detect AI-generated text. Not 100%. There are various tools out there. There's some stats here for you to read if you want. There are various tools out there that claim to be very good at detecting it, but we've chucked in like some of my old essays back when I was in BA, and it said, oh, this is definitely ChatGPT. It's like that tool didn't even exist back then because I'm old. So it's one of those things, it doesn't get it right all the time, and we can't make decisions to expel students based on false data. So we've taken a blanket approach, same as a lot of other institutions now, that we won't be using these AI checkers, specifically the text-based ones, to make decisions. And that's the key word there, making decisions. If we still suspect that you've used AI, we'll follow the standard plagiarism policy, in which case it means that we might schedule a meeting with you to talk about your project, and if you can evidence that you know what you're talking about, you've met those learning outcomes, there are no problems. If you've used it and then you can't talk to us about it, you've clearly not done the work, you've used ChatGPT, you will face academic misconduct, you could be expelled, which means, of course, you can no longer study anywhere in the UK. You get banned from all UK universities. So it is extremely strict. There's a little bit of flexibility to it, but the key thing is use it ethically, talk to us if you're not sure. We're not monsters, you know, we're not going to bite your head off if you say, I want to use AI, can I do it? It's fine. Just talk to us first. We'll tell you how to do it properly. Now the final thing here, we do have a little bit over here on the right. We've got some links. I've included a link for staff here for you to view in case you want to see what guidance we're given to help you with your studies. We do get a bit of extra information than what you get. But there's also a basic guide for how to use AI as students and a more detailed guide with like some actual Q&As of what you can and can't do. So hopefully you'll find this useful. Again, there's some ethical uses of AI here. I'm not going to bore you with this. We've discussed this already. So things you can and can't use it for. I'll leave that up if you want to take a quick photo now. Anyone? It's just some rough examples of how you can and can't use it. Ethical, unethical. Everyone's taking pictures, good. As I say, I'll send this out anyway, but... So, can you see some examples of how we've used AI at MSA over the past year? So last year we did a module with prototype urbanism, part of the architecture and urbanism lab. This was one of the very first AI allowed pieces of work that was generated here. Who thinks this is a good image? No one. No one thinks this is good. I'd say it's pretty good.
It still looks quite AI though.
It looks quite AI, but think about this. This came out just as AI was kind of really becoming emerging. No one really knew what AI looked like back then, only a year or so ago. But if I, as a student, produced this like 10, 15 years ago, back when I was studying, Jesus Christ, I'd have been hired straight away by Zaha. It's mental. And I think the key thing here, the thing that we found interesting is that the student was studying this site in Charistos in Greece. And you can see the type of architecture here. The student really wanted to do this Zaha-esque design. And by using AI tools, they were able to get this out of their system within one day, generating these forms. Whereas historically, students would have to learn how to 3D model these organic shapes, set up the lights, the textures, the materials. And then by the time they've done that and finally generated the image 3 or 4 weeks later, they realize, crap, this doesn't fit with the site. This is actually not very good. This isn't good design. And they've wasted almost a month. Whereas AI lets us get this out of our system. It's good for rapid development of design ideation. And then they went back and designed something a bit more fitting. Didn't look as pretty, but it was more appropriate. Another interesting use, again, things like storyboarding. This student could not draw to save their life. And I mean that in the nicest way. But they really wanted to understand like the narrative and convey how people would interact with their site. So they used AI to generate these kind of graphic styles to talk about how their site is being used. I think that's a lovely example of AI. It's the kind of thing where it helps people understand the project and the scheme. There's obviously no learning outcomes that are asking you to do any form of illustration to design how people use a space. Well, within reason. But you know, this can really help convey the essence of the project. This is a perfect use of AI. Oh, and then we get onto my stuff. So I've been doing some research. I'll try and talk through this a bit quick. Essentially, I've been looking at text to image, image to video, video to 3D model, which isn't really released anywhere yet, but I've kind of almost cracked it. Again, start with some early explorations of movement with people and kids and stuff. You can see he was kind of bouncing around a bit, not very good movement. Started getting onto kind of more interesting geometries. So things like this. Again, there's still some kind of glitches, but look at the quality of these as video. And again, we're going to do all this in a minute. Pretty cool stuff. But the thing I started to find with this is that if I had something to focus on within the scene, the environments around them became much more tangible. It actually stopped them from distorting and warping, which became really interesting. Because for those of you that have ever looked at photogrammetry before, you'll know that if you have multiple images, multiple frames of an image, you can stitch those together to calculate depth, which is essentially how you generate a 3D model. So it gave me an idea. Oh, firstly, I'll show this one just because I quite like this video. There's a Manchester-themed hive honey bee thing. I thought it was quite cool. Again, I was able to start getting things like depth of field in here as well, which was quite interesting. Yeah, you get the idea, it's boring. Started also with non-human movement, so things like cityscapes, again, trying to get depth of field. realised that obviously there are physics issues at the moment with text-to-video AI in particular. So things like cars turning inside out and flipping, wheels not turning, stuff like that. That horse, his leg was deforming a little bit, or her legs, you never know. So again, there are various issues with it. So I think it comes back to limitations. I think it's good at generating environments to an extent, but it's not good at simulating physics. Not yet. Now, some of you might have heard of Project Sora. This is OpenAI's cream of the crop, absolute best text-to-video AI. It's not open to the public, but luckily I am a red tester for this project. So we can get access to high-quality videos like this. Again, this doesn't exist. It looks like Santorini, right, in Greece. This isn't. This is fake. This is all AI. It is that level of detail, which is amazing. So again, if I quickly go back to that, looking at how well it's stitching all of these together, all of these frames, there is enough information there for us to start generating a 3D model. So I started doing this. Started turning this into a point cloud. Pretty cool stuff. Now, as you see, we are missing quite a bit of geometry from this one, mostly because of the limitations of camera angles, but also due to how far away the camera was from the object. So because it's too far away, it can't compute that depth very well. So what I thought I'll do something a bit closer up. And I wanted to try and do this with something that's not as cutting edge. I decided to use Krea and Luma to create these. Both have free plans. Don't have to pay a penny for them. We're going to use these today. So I used Krea to generate the image on the left. I then used Luma to animate this. And I was able to make this into a 5-second snippet. From that, I was able to generate a 3D model. Now, of course, if I added more snippets of video from different angles of the same render, I could then fill in these blanks where there's gaps. I could get closer, I could do more pans, I could do all sorts of things. But I think it's really exciting that we're starting to crack AI to 3D, because no one's doing this. I believe we are some of the first in the world to be doing this. So it's cool stuff. We might get onto a little bit of that today, I'm not sure. Can you start learning some AI now? Yes, let's do it. I can see half of you are a bit exhausted. I've been talking at you for 35 minutes straight. Should we start using some AI tools? I think so. So, very first one we're going to be looking at is LookX.ai. If you go to Google, just type in the word LookX. Should be the first link. And when you click on it, it should look something a bit like this. I'm just going to quickly check the chat online, see if there's any questions. Okay. No questions online, good. So I know there's quite a lot of information to go through just now, but hopefully a bit of a crash course on the types of AIs and the way things are emerging into practice. So I can see some people are still trying to get the website up. Again, it's LookX. Should look something like this once you click onto it. Anyone still waiting to open it? Some people are still logging in. I'll give you 60 seconds to log in and open LookX, and then we'll move straight on. It does say here you can start using LookX, and it does say get started for free. Now, before I start signing up and making accounts, I'm just going to scroll down a bit and look at some of the features in LookX. Well, firstly, I'll say that for those of you that started learning AI tools last year, like Stable Diffusion, Midjourney, DALL-E, all of those, you might have found some of these very complex to use at first. Midjourney was by far the easiest, I would say, to begin with, that generated good results. Stable Diffusion, I still find produces amazing results, but you need to go through the whole faff of installing from a GitHub, and it can be a bit tricky to do, unless you're using something like Comfy UI, which, again, you don't need to know about any of these things. It's just for those of you that know about them already. Where this changes the game is that you don't need a powerful computer to run any of this stuff. You can do all of this stuff online, again, completely for free. It's all web-based, and LookX in particular has a big range of tools that you won't find on most other AI engines. So for instance, architectural design, we can obviously type in a base prompt and we can generate a series of images. I can also bring in reference images. Remember I said about control nets earlier, where it picks up key features to generate something new. Again, it can do all of that. There are now plugins for LookX that work with SketchUp and Rhino. I think Revit now as well. Someone just told me the other day there's a Revit one. So if I'm orbiting a basic 3D model, and if I've typed in a prompt, it will take the control net of my 3D view and generate that in real time as an AI. So again, it saves me having to apply textures and materials and stuff like that. As a co-pilot, this is fantastic. Yes?
Is that still web-based when it's a plugin?
Still web-based.
No extra.
Yep, no local rendering. It uses like a web API. That's really, really cool. Again, for video generation, it does do video generation. It's not as good as some of the other tools. But again, this is real-time video generation, that previous one that was there. So as it was sculpting, it was updating those forms and geometries in real time. And again, taking a static image, whether it's AI generated or a sketch or a photo, being able to turn these into full-fledged, very short videos is fantastic. You know, for kind of atmospherics and narrative design. Oh, amazing stuff. Adds so much more to it. Plus, you don't need to wait hours for animations to render. This bangs out in a couple of minutes. It's great stuff. You again can train custom models on here. If you've got big data sets of your own work or other work, you can chuck these into here, tell the AI to train based on that one set of data, and it will only use that data to generate your outputs. So you can be sure that you are working very ethically. Yes?
Does the university have data sets that they produce that you can just use?
No, we don't actually, interestingly. That's a really good question for anyone online. Question was, do we have any data sets provided by the university for people to use? Not really, no, because I would say most of the projects we tend to work on are kind of inspired by real-world designers, I'd say, like Zaha, Foster, Gensler, Big, etc. In which case, most of that stuff is out there in the public realm. I'd say if you're looking to use stuff from a big famous architect or anything like that, when you go to Google Image Search, I do recommend Google Image Search. There are usage rights that you can choose. So like fair usage, copyright prohibited, things like that. If you set that to like fair trade or whatever, it's one of the allowed ones. Any images that you download from there, you can use to train an AI for free. Or you can use your own data as well, of course. But it's not something we would probably provide, I don't think. Again, I said to you before, you can connect this into SketchUp, Rhino, and I think there is a Revit one now. Well, it doesn't show Revit. Oh, this is really cool as well. So again, you can chuck in a base image, like a clay render or just a snapshot, and you can generate not just in render style, like photorealistic style, but a range of styles. You can do sketch, you can do conceptual, you could do like that photograph model style that I showed you. Again, amazing stuff. Who here has pixelated images? Who's ever uploaded to Moodle and you've got blocky images and your tutor just cries a single tear? I'm usually that tutor that cries. Yeah, there is no excuse to submit pixelated images. AI upscaling is a thing. There are various tools that have been around for a few years now, like Topaz Labs. Some of you might have come across these. You can find them online in various places. They're very, very useful for like AI image upscale and even AI video upscale. So again, starting with something blurry, you can bring things back into focus. You can increase the number of pixels. AI will fill in the blanks. It's great stuff. Is there anyone here whose first language isn't English? Say about half of you. Good. One thing that's good here, particularly learning architectural vocabulary, which is something that can differ between countries. What we mean in English might mean something different in your native language. Something like this, having a prompt assistant specifically for architectural terminology, is amazing. Absolutely incredible. So if you want to learn more about architectural terminology and actually explore what these things look like in real time, there's an entire library for this here. So as you're typing in your prompt, open the prompt assistant, You know, there's tons of sections here, and it breaks it down based on designers, materials, all sorts of stuff. It's not full-fledged, it's still in its infancy, but it works pretty well. It's not bad. And again, as the prompt assistant, there's some stuff here as well, like embellishing prompts. So I could type in something basic, tell it to enhance my prompt, and it will give me something more complex that I can then work further into to really fine-tune what I'm going to get out of it. So this is why we're going to use LookX. It has one of the biggest range of tools, and it has a load of free stuff on it. So if you go right up to the top and click on Get Started for Free, it should ask you to make an account or sign in. If it doesn't, you can choose Start Using LookX.
What's that?
Yeah, I see there's sign in. Ah, yeah, you can choose to sign up. Yeah, so once you get to this page, once you choose Start Using LookX, in the bottom left you'll find Sign In. And if you don't already have an account, you can choose to sign up. Now I recommend just sign up with like a standard Google account, or just choose Continue with Google. I think most of us have Gmail by now. It doesn't have to be Gmail, it can be whatever you like. But I would recommend make a quick account, and when you make the account, you should get a little thing pop up on the screen to say, would you like 100 free tokens? Click yes, something along those lines. You might need to do something for it, but you should get 100 tokens completely for free. One image generation is 1 token, so that's 100 images you can generate for free. I'm going to quickly sign in as well. Oh, I've got 200 tokens. I don't know how that happened.
I just got asked to do like a 5 question survey.
There you go. So you might get asked to do it like a 5-question survey to earn your 100 tokens. It's well worth spending the 30 seconds to do it. I've somehow got 201 tokens. I don't know how this happened. Oh, my subscription ends tomorrow apparently, 10th of the 10th. Oh, I'm doing this workshop at the right time. Yeah, that's actually a really good point. If you did sign up using your student email address, obviously MMU's firewalls are a little bit overkill. I'm sure when you've tried to download like Digimap data in the past, sometimes it can be up to half hour before it arrives. And you typically find that with any kind of new service. So for instance, if it's the first email you receive from LookX, if you signed up using your MMU email address, this could take up to half an hour to come through. So that's why I'm recommending you use like a personal email address. Again, could be a Gmail, could be Hotmail, could be Yahoo, whatever you use, doesn't matter. Just make a free account. Now I think pretty much everyone has signed in already. Hopefully you all received a little pop-up to say, do you want to do a 5-question survey? Hopefully you said yes to this to get your free credits. If over here your number says 0, then it means that you probably didn't click yes, as I told you to. In which case, if you log out and log back in again, you should get re-prompted to do the questionnaires. Hopefully. Yes. So I'll give you 30 seconds, quickly get those done, and then we're going to do the thing. And And in fact, while we're waiting for people to log in and do their 5 questions to get the 100 credits, is it 100 credits? Or is it 50 credits? 100 credits. Yeah, while you do the 5 questions, again, if it's not come up, if this says 0 here for you, just that bit there, sign out, sign back in. You should get a window pop up in the middle that says, do you want to answer some questions? Answer the questions, you get your credits. Now, first thing I'm going to mention is, before we start making things, I'm going to click on the Creations Plaza, just over here on the left. Now, the Creations Plaza is really interesting. This is other people's AI generations. Again, what you get on your screen is probably going to look different to what I get on mine. There's no kind of set order to this. But the good thing with this is I can have a look through. I can find an image that I particularly like. This looks kind of interesting. And when I click on an image, it should preview it, hopefully, if it ever loads. In fact, I don't like that image, that's quite ugly. But it will tell me all of the information on how this image was generated. So for instance, over here, it's got the rendering output, or the model used. It's got the prompt that was used to design this. It's got some other information. Here you can see the base image that these people worked with. Bit of a weird image to use. It's not a good example for a control net. But again, you can see how it's gone from this image into this image. And in fact, if it is one that uses a base image, at the bottom just down here of the main window, you can actually do a side-by-side comparison to see how well it fit the original geometry. Which is pretty cool. Quite like that. It's quite a nice feature. So why am I showing you this? It's essentially for inspiration. It's to get ideas of how people are building prompts, what kind of settings they're using. And what you'll find when you go through this is that there are 2 types of model you can use when you generate images. The first one is what we call a checkpoint. And the checkpoint is basically the main data set that your image is based on. It's how you get the geometry of your image. Yep. You'll also then get a separate thing called a LoRa or LoRa. And this is a thing that will stylize your image. It will apply a specific style to the geometry you've created. So we're going to play around with some of these today. Now, as I said, I am sure you're bored by now, so we're going to start making some stuff. I'm going to click on Start Creations over on the left. Now, yours might look like mine straight away, or it might look something more like this. Doesn't matter. We're going to definitely start with image tools, because we're not going to move on to video just yet. So I'm going to click on Image. There are various ones we can use here. So if we can do some real-time visualization, we can edit a part of an image. And in fact, if you just simply watch the videos of what they're doing, this is what we call in-painting. So you could upload an image, if it ever reloads, roughly paint in with like a paintbrush in here, type in the command swimming pool, or the prompt swimming pool, and it will turn that into a swimming pool. That's the kind of stuff in-painting can do. Now, all I'm going to do, I'm going to choose Image Generation Gen 2. And you see I have a few things here. I've got a space to put in my prompt. And again, I've got that prompt assistant here on the right if I want to use it. If I click on the labels, I can have a look through this and I can add some kind of keywords. Or I could just start typing. So, let someone give me a prompt.
Curtain wall.
Curtain wall. So, curtain wall on fire, designed by Zaha Hadid in the snow. Let's just go for it. This is a bit extreme. It's probably not going to generate this. But just as a quick test, we'll give it a go. I'm not going to input a reference image. I'm just going to set my number of creations to 1. I can adjust my aspect ratio. So at the moment this says 1 to 1, so it's going to make a square. I've got 4:3, 16 by 9. Again, you can play with these. Hopefully these resolutions make sense to you. You should have come across these before. I'm just going to make maybe like a 16 by 9 image. I'm going to click on Start Creations. And what you'll find on the free plan with the free credits, you might need to wait for your images to generate. Or it might say the server is busy right now, come back in an hour. You usually don't need to wait an hour, just wait a couple of minutes, refresh the page, resend, it usually goes through. On paid accounts, you get priority access to the queues, you don't need to wait for any of this stuff. But I'm in a queue at the minute, mine is generating. I'm interested in how this is going to interpret the word curtain wall. Is it going to do an actual curtain wall, or is it going to make a wall made of curtains? Are these curtains going to be on fire?
Why is there
A seed. So seeds are interesting. Can anyone tell me what seeds are?
which iteration?
Effectively, yeah. Like if I were choosing number of creations here, I might have 4 different interpretations of AI, like in different styles, for instance. And if I really like a particular one, maybe number 3, I would take seed number 3, and I would then use that to do further prompting, and it would take that same image and style to work further into it. And that's all seeds are, basically. It's just working further down routes.
Why is it
-1 because there's no reference. So because there's nothing to put in. We never use 0, because you should know as CPU, yes, 0 is effectively 1. So -1 would be no seed.
So mine's got
Yeah, exactly. Oh, it's done a thing. Let's have a look. That's not bad. In fairness, that's a curtain wall and it's on fire. Not sure, I believe that was designed by Zaha Hadid, but not a bad effort for a quick, 30-second attempt?
And glasses are flammable, so it's kind of...
Glass isn't generally flammable.
It's already impossible to
This is it. So this is kind of why I wanted to do this. Is you need to think of like what's realistic. What are the limitations you're going to come across. Now I'm going to give you a couple of minutes. Try generating an image. There are ways we can get infinitely more control over our images, which we'll do straight after this. I want you just to try and generate at least one image using the standard Gen 2 settings.
Is there a way to sort the textures out? Like the stone looks a bit weird.
Oh yeah, it doesn't look great. You could further refine into it, so you could use that input. Like on the start of Creations Plaza thing, the start of Creations Sony, not the Creation Plaza. You could go back to this one and choose that bottom one. Very well. To edit. This one. Yeah, so what you could do, you could take that image, if you saved it first, take that image, save it, re-upload it to here. And any parts of that image you're not happy with, you could paint over it with the brush tool and re-prompt to say high-res textures, something like that. Or in your initial prompt, you could say 4K or HDR or something like that, something to increase the resolution and quality.
Yeah.
You get better outputs. So I'm starting to see some interesting stuff appearing on people's computers. Again, I know most of you will be waiting in queues. One thing, again, that I would say is, especially during this workshop, because we all want to access the same server, try and set your number of creations to 1. Just so you're generating a single image for now. So otherwise, if we're all generating 4 times images, that's going to take ages to calculate.
Can we tell me the other?
Say that again?
Is it okay
Yeah, of course. Yeah, go ahead and download it. Wow, we got 139 people online. Hi everyone online. Hopefully you're finding this interesting. We're going to get into some really interesting stuff in a minute. Because after this I'm going to show you how to start turning your sketches or your 3D models into AI. How to do some real-time rendering visualization. So again, I'm just going to give everyone a couple more minutes, finish generating your first prompts, get a feel for what this is doing. I do recommend as well, I'm sure most of you have Instagram. This is obviously our first ADD workshop of the year. If you're taking pictures of what you're doing today in the workshops, whether you're on campus with me or whether you're at home, please take some pictures, whack them on Instagram or even just in stories. Tag the MSA ADD Instagram page. We want to see what you've all been working on. We love to see the stuff that you generate. We've got the MSA ADD Instagram loading now. For anyone who doesn't know about our Instagram, this is our Instagram page, MSA_ADD. Again, you'll always find the adverts for the workshops advertised here as well. It's always nice to have. So, has everyone generated at least one image by now? I'm seeing some really interesting generations. Has anyone had any problems generating the first one? No one on campus has had problems. Great.
It wasn't exactly what I said.
Yes.
I gave a reference image, but I didn't quite understand what the reference image was about.
I wondered if anyone would try bringing in a reference image. So, can anyone tell me if anyone did bring in a reference image to try and base it on, if it didn't work, can anyone tell me why they think it didn't work? Potentially, yeah, so because it's not thinking like a human, it doesn't know that we want to copy that image, even though we've based it, we've said that it's a reference image, it doesn't know how well we want to copy it. So what we would need to do is we would need to go into the advanced tools. So what I'm going to do for that, I don't think you can do it for Gen 2. There is a reference image setting, but there's no further settings after that. So what I would do, I would actually click back again. If you're currently on Gen 2 like this, just click on this top part here where it says Image Tools, Image Generation Gen 2. That gets you back to this previous section. And I'm going to go for Image Generation. Instead of Gen 2, just the first gen image generation. Now, what you'll find here are a lot more tools, many more things that you can do with LookX. So by default, you've got render mode. This is how the image generation Gen 2 works. It's like a simplified interface where you can just generate stuff. Just Gen 2 has a slightly better engine for better outputs. But we want to get control over what we're designing with AI. So I'm going to go on to Explore mode. Now, Explore mode is where things start getting a bit more complex. This is where we can really start to adjust the style, the data sets. We can use a reference image to base this stuff on. We can do some cool stuff with it. So the very first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to choose my base model. So where I've got base settings on Explore mode, it says Select Model. The one I have at the minute is LX Anything, Realism Enhanced. But if I open it, there are various models I can use. Now, essentially the model is how well the software is going to interpret your prompt to create geometry. That is all this is. So, for instance, if I have a data set like this one, LX Interior, if I chose this, if I try and do a bunch of prompts that are exterior based or landscape based, it's not going to work because it's using pictures of interiors and we're trying to generate an exterior. So have a look through these, try and work out what type of prompt you're going to need or checkpoint. Again, if you want to make an interior image, choose this one. I quite like LX anything, realism enhanced, because it gives me more detail generally. You've also got Stable Diffusion version 1.5's official model, which is a very powerful model. And with Stable Diffusion version 1.5, that model isn't just architecture based. This will have things like full-on photography stuff in there as well. So if you know the prompts for Stable Diffusion, it means you can use those in LookX, which is great. If you're not sure, just choose the one I'm using. LX Anything Realism Enhanced. Should be the very first one. So, next thing I could do, I could add a style LoRa. So where it says select model, it says add. I'm going to click on this. This is where we can adjust the style of the image. Do we want to go photorealistic? Do we want to go conceptual? Do we want to generate something that looks like a drawing, like a sketch? Do we want to create a floor plan, for instance? We can do all of that stuff from this. So have a look through. You can either just doom scroll through this and keep scrolling until you find something you like, or you can type in it. There is a little search bar. It's a bit hard to see, just over here. You can use the little search bar to search for things. But like that example I showed you on the presentation with the physical model, if I click on physical model, you'll see it does come up with a couple of models here, but they're not very good. These do not look like physical models. So again, just be careful with the LoRa's that you're using. Oh, that is a good question. What does LoRa stand for? I did remember. It's been so long since I've looked at it. I, honest to God, cannot remember. If someone wants to Google it and shout it out, what does LoRa stand for? All uppercase except the O. Just the O is lowercase.
L-O-R-A.
L-O-R-A. I can't remember what it stands for.
So I can't just define the LX anything style.
So I think you're on the LoRa section instead of the model section. Click the little X on that one. And then further up, should be... Oh yeah, you can already on the Windows.
Okay, so what you want.
Yeah, that's all good. And then the other one is just your LoRa stone.
Also, is it not so good at like getting images of people on?
It depends. It's actually a really good question. I'll say that over here for people online. For bringing pictures of people into this, if you're using the model that says Stable Diffusion v1.5, as I say, this isn't just trained on buildings. You will find animals, you'll find people, you'll find vehicles, all sorts of stuff in there. So you could try and use those to try and bring people in. What I would do instead, personally, is I would focus on generating the architecture, and then I would re-bring the final image in, either for a bit of compositing in Photoshop to bring people in, or I would use the in-painting tools here, mask out an area where I want a person, and try and use a different engine like Stable Diffusion v1.5 to generate a person.
So the diffusion is different to LookX.
Yeah, it's a separate software, but the main engine for it, the v1.5 engine, is available within LookX. So instead of that LX Anything Realism Enhanced, you could choose Stable Diffusion v1.5. That gives you access to cars and people and stuff.
Is that free as well?
It's on there now, yeah, you can choose it. That's what I'm saying. If you click on LX Anything, it will be the final one. It's just that one there. But again, I wouldn't do it at this stage. I would do that once you've generated the architecture and then re-bring it back in for the post-production. I need to choose a style myself. I'm going to search in drawing. Let's see what I can do here. Perspective section drawing, that sounds quite exciting. Let's give that a try. Now, when I choose a LoRa, did anyone find out what LoRa stands for?
Long range.
Long range? Nah, it's got to be something more interesting than that. I'm pretty sure it's something different. When you bring in a LoRa, you also get a little control slider. So this little one just here. So this is the intensity of the style. That sounds more like it. Low RAM adaptation. I'll go with that. So over here, where you got the LoRa settings, I've added one in. This one was perspective section drawings. I can adjust the intensity of the style. If I drag it all the way down, it won't inherit the style at all. If I drag it all the way to the top, it will heavily use this style to drive my image generation. Underneath, I've now got a thing that says PTAR. This is the keyword for me to use this. It will add this in automatically. You don't need to use it. Just don't click X, otherwise it's not going to use that. Now finally, we're ready to start generating an image. So I'm using my perspective section. Someone give me a prompt. Something exterior based. Go on, Jakey boy. Say that again? Residential high-rise. Okay. So residential high-rise building. Anything else I want to add to this? Populated. Full of life. Party. Now I'm going to include the word section drawing because for me I'm using a section drawing LoRa, so I just want to make sure that gets referenced. I'm not going to use a reference image just now. I'm going to do a single image generation. Maybe I'm going to do ratio 4:3. I'm just going to click on start creation. So hopefully what this should now be doing is giving me a little bit more control over my images. It should still use my prompt, it's still going to use a powerful engine, but now it should be applying a graphic style to my outputs. So it starts giving me more control. So there's 3 people in the queue ahead of me. Again, I recommend you all do the same. Don't worry about reference images just yet. I'm going to talk to you about using reference images and control nets next. You'll probably find at this stage that if you do try and use a reference image, like a sketch or a photo or something, it still won't follow it very well. But again, I'll show you how we can do that in a minute. It's a lot of waiting when it comes to AI. Still faster than doing it yourself, obviously, but it is a lot of twiddling your thumbs. Can you cancel? I don't know. Oh, I've made it through the queue. It's going to make a thing. Yeah, it's too many people trying to generate them. Yeah, you might just need to, well, a good way around it, wait a couple of minutes and refresh the page and then try and submit it again. It should remember all the settings, hopefully. Yeah. Fingers crossed. For anyone online trying to do this, you might be hitting limits by now, saying that the servers are busy. Again, looking in the chat, we've got 133 people online, at least 30 people in the CAD lab following along. There's 160 people just from MSA trying to generate images on one server. I would say the best time to do this is like late at night, make yourself a coffee. Not that we promote you stay up late and do the 24/7 working thing. We're against that culture these days. I very much lived through that myself. It's not fun. Make sure you get your sleep. But generate a bunch of prompts just before you go to sleep. That's when the servers are quiet. Yeah, mine's still going. The other thing as well, of course, if you feel as though you are going to be using this, signing up for accounts, like actually paying for accounts, is so worth it. If you are going to be using AI for just like 1 or 2 projects, they're like 1 month subscriptions at a time. You can get them for as low as like £6 or £7. depending on the engine you use. And it gives you like priority access. There's no more waiting in queues or anything. It's really, really nice. Saves you so much time.
Well, the only way to get more code on LookX.
Yeah. Unless you log out, log in with a new email address, and just keep spamming it. But even then, you don't get priority access to the queue. Oh, that's not bad. So with that sketch Laura that I just added, remember my prompt was high-rise residential. We did ask it to be populated, and in fairness, it's kind of populated it with some geometry, I think. Not sure what it is. Didn't populate it with people, but this looks like a drawing. It's not bad. That is the style that I tried to generate. Not bad. Does it mean anything? No, of course not. You know, I didn't give it enough information. If I gave it more structure, obviously this would then start becoming a design, but I didn't give it any information other than a prompt and a style. So that's why it's not generated anything actually tangible. And this is the type of AI that we're against at the moment. If you're just generating stuff for the sake of it that isn't informed by your own thinking, your own vocabulary, then what's the point? You know, you need to really, really start interrogating how to build these things. And the next thing we're going to show you is how to actually start adding in reference images to start driving your designs. So this is where you can start doing sketches, and I'll give you a couple of minutes now if anyone wants to grab some paper. I did say on the booking thing, bring some paper and a pen, but I don't think anyone did. Some people did. If you want to do some sketches now, by all means feel free to, or if you have any sketches online, you can use those. Also, it doesn't have to be a sketch. If you have a 3D model, if you want to extract a wireframe or a render, ideally a piece of your own work you want to revisualize. So everyone find an image. If worst comes to worst, Google Images exists. Just find something there, you'll be fine.
Is it better to have a sketch of use wireframe or use like a sketch now?
Potentially. Well, we'll look through the settings in a sec. No. So I think I'm going to be really boring for my one. I'm just going to choose a very basic line drawing from Rhino. Maybe something like one of these. That Barcelona Pavilion workshop I did last year. Something like this, just something with clean borders would work well for this example. I'd say the cleaner the geometry, the easier that it's going to be able to pick up on this geometry and revisualize it. I'd also say as well, for those of you that are doing any sketches, what I would usually do before I bring it into AI is put your sketch into Photoshop and just really crush the levels in. So like white is super bright white, black is super dark black. I almost said bright black then. Really crush your levels close together, so you get a super high contrast image. The more contrast you get, the better the AI software will pick up the geometry. But again, you can use a photo, you can use a sketch, you can use a 3D model. As long as you've saved it as an image, it should work. So I think that's probably enough time. I'm going to go ahead and start setting up a reference image. So I'm still back over here in image generation, the standard one. I'm still in explore mode. I'm still keeping my same model under base settings. I'm using LX Anything Realism Enhanced. Again, you can use whatever you want. The style, the LoRa, I'm going to come back and change in a minute. And same thing with the prompt. I'm going to come straight down to where it says reference image. And I'm going to click to upload an image. So I'm going to try and find the thing. There you go. So I'm uploading an image. I'll give everyone a second to upload an image. So where you've got reference image, click on upload, upload an image. Again, it could be a sketch, it could be a photo, it could be a render. I want you all to upload something. Or not. And what you'll find is we can now start to get control over this geometry. So firstly, we have similarity. So how closely do I want my new image to follow the old image? How similar in terms of geometry do I want it to be? That one that I showed you earlier, where it's like that squiggly sketch and it turned it into a physical model, that was like 80 or 90% similar. So it picked up on the forms of it. If you were to overlay them, they wouldn't actually line up. It's just inspired by the forms. Now for me, I'm going to bring this up quite high. I'm going to go 90%. It does give you a warning when you go above 50, but I say stuff it. Bring it all the way up to like 90%. And then the final thing, we can now choose the control method. If I click on where it says composition control, you'll see I can only choose composition control. There is no other drop down here. So instead we would choose the algorithm. And the algorithm I would choose is Canny. Of course it depends on the type of image you're bringing in. I've personally always been a fan of Canny ever since the Stable Diffusion days. You can see how it's kind of deriving outlines from objects and how it turns it into something new. I find this is really good for finding clean structures, as long as you have nice clean outlines. You can also do it based on depth maps. So for instance, if you've done renders, if you've calculated a depth pass on your render, you could bring that in and you can start doing some really cool depth of field stuff. If you're working with a sketch, you might want to use the scribble one at the bottom, because it will take kind of uneven line geometry, build a control net, generate a fresh output. But again, I'm going to use Canny. And again, I'm going to do a single image. Now that my reference image is set up, now I would go and start exploring with my style and prompt. So I no longer want this perspective sketch drawing. So I'm going to click on the little bin icon next to it. I'm going to add something new. What should I add? What style should I make Barcelona Pavilion? Maybe cyberpunk. Cyberpunk architecture, that looks kind of cool. Let's go for that. And then for my prompt, again, I could do whatever. It's worth mentioning you can add multiple styles to blend things together. Forgot to mention that. So if I click on add again for the LoRa, maybe I just want to choose this one, like this sketch design. So it's now going to try and blend cyberpunk with sketch design. Both of these have a 50% weight. I could increase one to like 75, the other to 25. Try and get them as balanced as you can, and it will merge them together in those ratios. It's really cool. I would give this a new prompt, something that responds directly to the reference image. So obviously if I tell this to be a high-rise residential now, that's obviously not going to work for a short building like the Barcelona Pavilion. And again, single image generation. Let's try and free up the servers. There's apparently one person ahead of me. This will be the last image we generate in LookX. We're going to move on to another software next. Starts getting more and more powerful as we move through these. And we will be finishing in just under 40 minutes. We still need to do some real-time image generation, which is where the future is, I think. And then we'll also do some video stuff as well. That's different. I wouldn't say it quite follows what I was telling it to do. Yeah, that's interesting. That really didn't follow that at all. I mean, it does say if you go above 50%, sometimes it breaks it. It is 50-50 whether it breaks. I can try lowering it down a bit. It can also depend on the styles as well. It's a really good point. Something we haven't really discussed is under more settings, right at the bottom, just down here, if I can do the thing. Down here you've got more settings. So there's a few things here. The sampling steps. This is how many samples of the reference images is it going to take. 20 samples is the bog standard for all AI image generations. You can get better results by increasing the number of samples, but the problem is the more number of samples, the longer it takes to generate the image. So it's a bit of like a pros and cons kind of situation. The CFG scale, guys, shh, thanks. Let's whisper in a helicopter. You got the CFG scale. CFG scale basically is how well it kind of conforms to the prompt. That's the loosest way, most basic way I could describe that. So for instance, this is set to 7 at the minute. If you hover over these, it does give you a brief description. The degree to which the aforementioned text description affects the generated results. Now this is really interesting, especially where we're playing with something that's using a control net. Because what percentage do we want to be the control net, and what percentage do we want to be the prompt? So you might find that by balancing the CFG scale, raising or lowering it, it will prioritize either the prompt or the control net reference image. So it's about finding that balance between the two. Now the sampling methods by default is set to DPM++ SDE. I actually don't like this. I always use EULA-A. This has always been my go-to for all AIs. Don't ask why, it's just habit. I just find it's better results. So sampling methods, EULA-A. And then I would generate a new example. So this time I took a completely different LoRa, and you'll see now it's definitely taken that sketch geometry that I chucked in. That's not bad as a very first attempt with almost no prompt. I've not spent any time trying to actually map this out and plan it. The more information I give the prompt, the more I balance the CFG, the more I play around with it, the better the results I'll get. But that's not bad. For a very quick mock-up, that is not bad. Also doesn't help that I'm choosing these LoRa's at random. Again, this is what's really going to make a difference here. I'm using this one, Sketch Design, which is apparently for urban plazas and canopies. Not very appropriate for what I'm doing right now. So hopefully you've all had some interesting results from that so far. Some of them might be good, some of them would be less good. Again, you can explore the rest of LookX in your own time. In particular, I recommend you all have a go of that edit mode, because that means that you can do some in-painting. You can bring in an existing image, paint over it, type in a prompt, generate something new. Now, what is the problem with using a system like LookX? What's the problem we've faced here today?
There's less control than if you use Photoshop.
Less control.
Its own interpretation.
It's its own interpretation. I think my biggest problem, for me, time is money. Realistically, I sound like a pimp. Time is money. If I'm having to sit here waiting for all these generations and not have any kind of idea whether I'm even moving in the right design direction, that is a waste of my time. So I'm going to introduce you now to Krea. Krea is amazing. It's not architecture specific like LookX. This is a much bigger, broader AI. But this is what I ended up using. You know my intro presentation I showed you? All of my works there. Those original images were all in Krea. For those of you that do some hardcore stable diffusion stuff, you'll be familiar with the flux model. You know we were using that checkpoint just now, that LX anything, blah, blah, blah. Flux is another checkpoint, it's another model. It is by far the most powerful model in the world right now. It's great. Now again up here, you can click on pricing. It gives you an idea of pricing up here. You can choose the free plan, which gives you some free daily generations and limited access to the Krea tools. For $10 a month, you can make 36,000 real-time images, 120 enhanced images, 200 videos, and full access to the Krea tools. I would say that is worth $10. How much is $10 in pounds these days? 7 or 8 quid. Someone said £7.80, I think. Yeah, that's very specific. I'm impressed. Someone's just been to America, exactly. So what I want you to do... Oh, and there is also educational discounts you can get on most of these. LookX offer them and Krea offer them. I wouldn't bother with that today, but something to do in the future. But you will get a sign up button in the top right. You'll see I'm already signed in, so I don't have the sign up button. I am using a paid version for today, just the cheap $10 one. But I'm going to click not on Flux. I'm actually going to come down a little bit. In fact, I can see people are making free accounts. But when you're ready, I want you to click on the one that says Real-Time Compose Images. Just going to leave that there for a second. Don't do enhance yet, don't do video yet. We'll take you through those. I can see some people have gone onto it already. There's some big smiles on faces. That's what I like to see. So, from the main page, once you've signed in, scroll down a bit and go to Real-Time Compose Images. Now, this is kind of really cool. So, firstly, ignore the background. The background doesn't really do much of anything. But what you can do, there's various tools over here on the left. So, for instance, I've got this blue box and this pinky purple sphere or circle. I could delete these. I could have new shapes. I can use these to control the composition of my image in real time. Now, I've already got a prompt typed in. I've got robotic android walking through a futuristic parametric Voronoi pavilion designed by Zaha Hadid. Because why not? So it will keep that prompt. I can move these bits of geometry. And look at what that's doing. It's using these as a base to inform the structure of my scene. Really cool stuff. Now, some of you might not want to use that at all. You might not want to bring in any geometry to drive your scenes. You might just want to work with the text prompts. In which case, down here in the very bottom left, it's quite hard to see. You'll see where it says text, compose, screen, and camera. I'm going to do text. If I bring it just to text, it will bring it up like this. So maybe I want to change this. Maybe I want a male robotic android. And you see, as I start typing these things, this is generating in real time. No waiting 4 or 5 minutes for a single image that doesn't look right. All of this stuff generates instantly. And again, on that free plan, I think was it 36,000? Or it might be the $10 plan, something like that. It's really cool stuff. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to play around with prompting on this. Just again, make sure you're on the text mode. And one final thing that I'll mention as well. Remember I said that flux model is really powerful? Down here in the bottom right, you do have some tools such as model. At the moment, we're using the HD model to generate these. I recommend, once you get the hang of like a good prompt, switch to the flux model. The flux model will generate some very, very nice results. Look at it. Flux model uses a little bit more in terms of power requirements. So if you're on the free version, it might burn through your credits a bit quicker, basically. You could go straight to flux. I wouldn't recommend doing enhance or anything else or upscaling just yet. Focus on getting a good prompt. And if you're happy with the prompt but not happy with the image, there's also just to the left of your prompt, there's a little kind of variation button. Looks like a little circle arrow thing. You can click on that. Look at that. It's insane. How mental is this?
What are the geometries doing?
What are the geometries doing? What do you mean?
Oh, so basically they're just to help structure your scene. So they're just there to say, okay, I want Martian soil, blah blah blah. So you can obviously put something to the sky. So by having that there, you're saying where you want to sky. It's about controlling composition. You can scale that.
Some of you might have noticed by now, remember we used some LoRa's back in LookX. You also have LoRa's or LoRa's over here on the right. So there are a few kind of preview ones just here. If you click on their either random style or browse style gallery, there are so many different ones. Now for me, I'm a massive anime fan personally. I'm going to use this one just here. And I'm going to give that a chance to refresh. If it doesn't refresh, just refresh the page and go back onto it. It should remember your prompts and everything. There we go. Ah, look at that. That's awesome. Not bad. Not bad at all. Are there any questions so far?
When in these image generation models, specifically the ones that can create in 3D videos, do they then have any kind of export file, like a SketchUp file, Rhino file, Resi file?
At the moment, no. So,
Do you think until that happens, because that's going to make the job straight away?
really, really good question. For anyone online who didn't hear, it's kind of about the emergence of kind of AI to 3D, and when can we expect to get like SketchUp files, Rhino files, things like that from this. The process isn't there yet. Guys, shh. Thanks. The process isn't really there yet for 3D. No one's really unveiled a model for 3D models from AI yet, kind of other than myself, I think, because I'm sad and I learned how to do this stuff. But it's just not really a thing. No one's done it as a 3D model from AI yet. But I think realistically, now that these tools are starting to get out there in the public realm, we're going to be seeing this by the end of the academic year. Wouldn't surprise me if by June, July, you'll be able to download SketchUp models, Rhino models, Revit families that are built from AI models. Would not surprise me at all. They'll be seriously expensive. It would not surprise me.
What, buy the license or for someone to make it?
Either. But yeah, technology just isn't there yet. No one's done it yet. So I want you all to generate an image. Again, could be in any particular style you like. I'm going to play around with some of these. Nah, I don't like that one.
Someone said the online class is muted and
Oh.
have the sound.
Let me have a look. Ah. No. Yeah, we're down to like 10 people online. No. I've just unmuted. Damn it. Oh, I wonder how long that's been muted for.
Maybe 10 minutes.
On the plus side, for anyone who has been watching online, if it's gone muted, what you'll find is I'm doing a separate recording in OBS that isn't muted. So you'll be able to watch the rest of this back on the video. You haven't missed anything at all. I'll upload this tonight for everyone. So you'll still be able to access it. Right, we've only got about 20 minutes left, so I'm going to try and power through. Oh, that's not nice. Now, what you can do, once you've generated an image, again, could be any style you like. I've gone for a kind of almost sketchy, conceptual style this time. You could choose to download your image in the very bottom right. And that will just save it. You've also got Quick Enhance. So Quick Enhance will do its best to bring more life to your image. Sometimes it will do this in a very good way. Sometimes it will completely ruin an image. So I'd always recommend save the image first, download it. So for instance, I've just enhanced this. I think that looks crap compared to what I just had. I much prefer the other image generation I just had. Now, while we're still on Krea, if you hover over at the top where it says generate, you see we've just been using the real-time mode. There is also Flux, which is basically kind of using the same model that we've been using, but it's not in real time. I don't know why anyone would use that. If you could just do the whole thing in real time, you get way faster responses this way. Still uses the same engine.
So you use less credits?
No. Interestingly, real time somehow uses less.
Are credits just on downloads?
No, it's on generations.
So the interactive generation, you put everything inclusive, is that a new image?
That's a new image. So you need to be really careful. But again, that $10 plan per month, that's what is it, 36,000 generations?
What's the free one?
I can't remember. I'll have a look in a minute. Now, if we move on to some video stuff, we go to generate video. If anyone's ever done any like Premiere Pro or After Effects before, you'll understand what this is doing straight away. It's working with keyframes. So what this is a few snippets or single frames, and we can place them at specific points during the clip duration. For instance, this is currently a 3-second clip. I can change this over here on the right. I'm going to keep this as 3 seconds for now. But I can see by clicking the play button what this is going to do. So this is a looping animation. This is going to morph between two different images. This image on the left and this image on the right. And it's going to try and fill in the blanks and merge these things together. How cool is that, firstly? That's pretty awesome. Now imagine how you can apply this for architecture. If you've got a still render that you've done, or if you've got a sketch, for instance, that you've done, and if you want people walking across this, all you need to do is Photoshop a person on one side for image A, move the person to the other side for image B, type in your prompt underneath to say person walking across the scene, left to right, or right to left, and click the go button. And that person will then walk across. Because AI knows you want this person to walk across. Crazy, crazy stuff. Now, of course, you know, this looks very well and good and everything, but this isn't what I want to generate. So what I could do, I could click on the delete button for each of these. If I double click in the space, at least I think it's double click. Why can I not add keyframes? No. I might need to refresh the page. Sometimes it breaks. Yeah. So if it doesn't come up with add keyframe, just refresh the page. You should be able to click anywhere to add a keyframe. And you can just choose to upload an image. So I'm going to try and do something a bit different. Make sure you adjust the prompts as well. Don't like the prompt box on this. There you go. So for me, I'm going to use a couple of my existing images that I showed you earlier. I'm going to have one robot walking away from the camera, hopefully turning into another robot walking away from the camera. We've also got a little gear icon over here on the left. I can click on this, and I can choose the aspect ratio of the thing. And I can choose if I want my video to loop, like continuously loop, which is nice to do to begin with. Now annoyingly it doesn't give me a preview, it's still showing me the previous one. I need to click on generate video for it to process my new images and prompts that I put in. So that's going to do some thinking. Again, I've paid for Creo at the moment, so I should probably hopefully get a bit of a faster priority. So that's kind of cute, that's not too bad. Slightly different style to what I originally put in, because I didn't set these images to 100%. These were down to like 0.6 or 0.7. If I put that up to a full 1.0, it should retain the fidelity of that a bit better. So I could just click and drag here to adjust the style. There we go. I might need to regenerate. Let that do some more thinking. And of course you've also got some styles down here on the bottom left. So this is in film mode at the minute, but there's also render mode, animation mode, and experimental mode. Experimental mode isn't the highest quality, but it is by far the craziest. It's definitely worth having a quick look.
I have a question.
Sure.
How much credit does the video take?
That is a good question. How many credits does a video take? I'm actually not sure on here. I think by default you get something like 3 minutes of processing time on the free accounts, I think it is. So I don't know if someone wants to generate a video now and let us know how many of that processing time it takes. But it's usually like 0.2 or 0.3, something like that. It's tiny, absolutely tiny. I've generated probably a couple of hundred videos and I'm still on 0.34 out of 10 hours worth. You get 10 hours on the $10 plan. Amazing.
you do anything with one keyframe?
Yeah, you can do stuff with one keyframe. In fact, yeah, let's do something experimental. So if I delete this person, so I'll bring this one over here. If I click on experimental, let's see what this does, and click on generate. So this is with a single keyframe, looping animation. This will probably start getting a bit psychedelic. It's where we see what robots start dreaming of. Oh, it's processing. It's going to do a thing. Oh, it's gone a bit weird. That wasn't as exciting as I thought it would be. The one I like doing is when you put in just like a static scene, like with no prompt, and just let it go for it. It's like, let me see what I've got. That's quite a nice one. So if I put in like this interior here that I made the other day, here's one I made earlier. Click on generate on experimental, no prompt at all. I just want to see what it does. Yes?
Try putting in annoying animations like smooth up, like add frames. Does that work?
It doesn't really on this. So it doesn't really let you put in video stuff as such. You technically can. It just doesn't really like it and uses way too much computation time. You could extract individual keyframes. It's a website called Frame Extractor. You can upload any video onto it, tell it the number of frames you want to extract, and it will do it over a set amount of time. Puts it all into one compressed folder for you. Great for photogrammetry. But yeah, you could do it that way. There you go, that's pretty cool. So with no prompt, it's now just trying to think, what do I want to do with this as a looping animation? And it will take my original image, now it's almost kind of blooming and morphing and warping. Now I could just plaster these over Instagram, as I always do, and it makes me look as though I'm some form of designer or something. It's great. That's so sad that it muted online. Oh, we're down to one person apparently. Oh, no, we're not. That was people with hands up. Sorry for not answering the questions online. We've got too many questions in person. If people want to write some questions in the chat, if you're online, I will try and work through them in order. But I probably won't be getting people to shout out. But feel free to type stuff in. I'll do my best to respond. Just casually ignoring everyone. There is also an upscale button. So again, I could click on upscale just underneath where it says generate video, or I could click on download just to download the raw one. If I click on upscale, it brings me straight to the enhanced panel. I can choose an upscaling factor, I can choose a frame rate, I can further prompt into it and do some stuff. In fact, let's see what it does. If I click on enhance. I'm aware we've only got about 10 minutes left. I am going to be showing you one more software in a second. I love the next one. Krea is fantastic for image generation. I find this so much more powerful than Midjourney or anything else now. This is my go-to for image generation, especially the interactive real-time mode. So good. Well, you've just played with it yourselves. You can see the power of it. For me, doing this video enhancement, it's currently at 40%. I'm not sure I can be bothered to wait for it. 60%. I might come back to it. I'm going to show you one more website before we wrap up. The next one is Luma, lumalabs.ai, or lumalabsai something. It is .ai. Now, this This is more specifically for video-based content. So while Krea is great for the interactive elements and the image generation, I'll say Luma is more specific for video. There are various other ones out there. So for instance, OpenAI's Project Sora, which isn't out to the public yet. Runway Gen 3 is another very powerful one that is very hard to get into at the minute because it's in so much demand, but it's more powerful than this in some respects. But what I would do, I would sign up again for a free account on this. Just click on Try Now. I'm going to go straight to signing in. I think it was this one. And much like the other ones, this is actually a really simplified engine. I can either just type in a prompt to do some text to video, or I can upload an image. So for instance, that one I downloaded a minute ago. Let's try and give it a prompt. Robot walking towards camera. If I type in the word camera, it gives me controls. If I type in cameras, I can do camera move left, camera move up, camera push in. I get some basic 3D AI controls here. So for instance, I could choose camera pull out. I don't want it on a loop. I'm actually going to turn off enhanced prompt. I find this actually doesn't generate very good details at the minute. And I'm going to click go. So just from a single keyframe, again I could add a second keyframe now, I could have it go from one thing into another. But just from a single keyframe, I've told it do robot walking towards camera, camera pull out. Sometimes it nails the movement, sometimes it just doesn't do anything. So you might take a couple of goes. But again, hardly uses any credits to generate anything. And you can see how fast this is doing. This has almost done my 5-second video already from a single image. Look at that! For my single image that I made back in Krea, chucking it here in this style, I've now animated my person walking through the sea. Crazy stuff. Why wasn't this around when I was a student? This would have been awesome. Love it. So yeah, pretty awesome stuff. I've got way too many creations here that I've been playing with. One thing that I've found in particular is that depending on the type of camera movement you do, for instance, if I tell the camera to pan rather than move, it actually distorts the geometry. So if you're going to try and follow what I've been trying to do with like photogrammetry and stuff, trying to make 3D models, that will actually break your model because it distorts it as the camera moves. Whereas if you do it as like an orbit, or if you tell it to crane, then that will actually preserve the fidelity of the image and the 3D model. Now I'm aware it is 5 minutes to 4. I really do want to finish at 4 o'clock on the dot today. Does anyone have any questions for me before we wrap up? You can of course explore things like Luma in your own time. It works the same way as Krea. You just upload a single image, type in a prompt if you want to, click on go, it will generate your 5-second clips. One thing that's worth mentioning as well is, let's say I've got this one, maybe I want to extend it further, so maybe I want it longer than 5 seconds. There's a little extend button just down here. I can click on this. I can now say camera pan left maybe. Click on go. That will now add another 5 seconds to my existing 5 seconds of video, but it should start off with 5 seconds of the camera coming back, and now it should then start moving around. So again, I can start building these things up. Seriously cool stuff.
How much was Luma?
Luma, about the same, I think. Like, I can't remember if I paid more for Luma. So I think I ended up paying for like a higher tier. But yeah, I mean, you can have a look.
Do you know if a lot of these websites and stuff,
They're the pricings. There you go. Say that again.
do you know if these websites, the
They are all different code. They're all based on diffusion models at the minute. Even Project Sora, the cutting edge one from OpenAI, is still a diffusion model. So it's all based on the same back-end system. But it's the same way that like all cars have generally 4 wheels and some doors and an engine kind of thing. It's all the same system, but modified in different ways for different configurations and outputs. Same kind of thing. But yeah, it can get very expensive. Obviously, I don't know whoever would pay for Premiere. That's $400 a month. Just don't think you need it. But yeah, so on the free version, you get 30 generations a month. You don't get priority access to the queue. I paid for, I think it was the standard one. It might have even been the plus one. For me, it's worth it because I'm doing research into AI stuff at the minute. But again, it's up to you. I'm going to have a quick look online, see if there were any questions appearing in the chat. Let's have a look. New. So I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. What I'm going to do, everyone online, I'm going to hang up on this one now because I'm going to say the session is over. If there's any more questions here in person, by all means put your hand up or shout them out. I'll do my best to answer. The recording of this, again, I'll be uploading later today, hopefully, if I get time to process it. And then, yeah, I'll share the presentation document as well. It'll be uploaded onto Moodle under the same workshop. So yeah, thank you very much for coming, everyone. Hopefully you learned something new today. Hopefully you found it useful. And I will see you all at next week's workshop.